Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stella Mayer, and I'm the Director of Alumni and Constituent Engagement at Wilkes University. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the 8th installment in our Kernel Connections series. Kernel Connections are online webinars designed to bring lifelong learning opportunities to Wilkes alumni no matter where you live, so you can tune in and connect with our distinguished faculty and alumni on a variety of topics. Our other webinars are available on our Wilkes Alumni YouTube channel. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be added to the channel over the next few days, and we'll send that link around if you'd like to refer to it later or share it with any friends or colleagues. Today's webinar is titled Recruiting Insights, What Recruiters Look For in a Candidate, and I'm pleased to introduce our speaker, Sharon Castano, who completed a master's degree at Wilkes in 2010. Just a few housekeeping tips. Please remain muted throughout the webinar unless you're called on to ask a question. You're welcome to submit questions in the chat during the presentation, and we will make sure to get to those at the end. Thank you all again for joining us today, and with no further ado, I will turn it over to Sharon.
Ella, thank you. And Julie, thanks for connecting with me to host this event as well. This is what I do on a daily basis. So I have a few slides just for reference, but I think a lot of it may be conversational. So please feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions. I know a lot of times people don't understand the back end process of recruiting. So I know I didn't really understand it either, and I had experience in it. So I think it'll be good to see and hear a little bit about what we're talking about. So I will share in a second. My system is a little delayed when I'm on Teams. So if my conversation seems a little delayed or the PowerPoint slide switching seemed a little delayed, I usually have that problem in these conference rooms. Prime example. So just to get started, I just want to present a little bit about myself. So yes, I have a bachelor's degree in marketing from Bloomsburg University. I was at Wilkes University working actually when I received my master's in education in 2010. And the way that I'm listing my experience here is actually from the later days up to currently, right? So, and I'm doing that on purpose because I want you to kind of see a career path in motion instead of watching it backwards. So back in early 2000, I was a corporate trainer in organizational development for what was formerly called Blue Cross of Northeastern Pennsylvania. Now it's known as Highmark. I was also an adjunct professor at Luzerne County Community College at the same time. So what I was doing for Blue Cross was anytime they had a new software to implement within the company, I would either go and learn the software or teach the software. So for example, Outlook, I would just teach that as a regular class. But if they got a new customer service piece that they needed training for, I would learn as it was being built, and I would create the documentation for people who were going to start using the product and needed guides, right? Job aids. And then I would teach the course itself. Director of internships and parent programs at Wilkes University, one of my favorite jobs, if not my favorite. And I had a number of different roles, and I'll start with the director of internships. I've been in internships now for 20 years. And parent programs came to me probably about 3 to 4 years before I left Wilkes. Basically what that was I was communicating with parents about ways to help their child develop a career path. So it still included my original position, but it was more geared towards parents as my target market. As the director of internships, I worked with students on the front end piece of getting an internship, right? So we would talk about their resume, their cover letter, their interview skills, how many credits they should get if they were doing an internship for credit, and how to get best to their career path that they chose. So as I did that role, I would always stop at the point where, did you get the job? That was my question, right, Christine? So I would say to Christine, did you get the job? And she would say yes or no. Or did you get the internship? Yes or no. Now I'm on the back end. So what I do now is not prepare them, but I am the person who reads that resume and makes the decision. So right now I'm in the, as a senior recruiter, university relations, I look at the intern resumes. I look at full-time as well for different roles, but so we'll be able to talk about that. But now I'm doing the back end and hiring the student into their role. Before we start, I also want to share two key, if you take anything away from the presentation, please have it be these two things. When you are looking for a job, please save the job description, save the posting, do a screenshot, copy it, paste it, because it will be taken down, right? And then right before you go into the interview, you're going to want to read it and it will be gone. So please do that. If you remember anything from today, that'll be the first thing. Second is to, as you're reading job descriptions, I read job descriptions all the time. Nursing, whatever the role is, I'm reading the job descriptions, and you will see a constant. And it's some of the verbiage that's used over and over again in a lot of these job descriptions. Make a word list. So start jotting down what are some of the words you see in all of the same job postings that you are looking at for whatever role that might be. And then make sure you're incorporating them, if you can, on your resume. So let's start. 3 things we're going to talk about today: the resume, the process, and the interview. And the reason we're doing it in that order is because from a recruiter's standpoint, and this is the recruiter here, looking for a few things, and I'm working with a few things. So I'm working with speed. I don't want to say speed might sound like a harsh word because you think I'm speeding through your resume, but we do have hundreds of applicants. So just to give you an example, for a data analytics intern at PPL, I may get 1,300 resumes to hire 2 candidates. It's a lot. So thoroughness on the resume part is very important. Keeping it to a certain amount of length, not repeating long history, having your skills match the role without making things up. But if they're looking for someone who has advanced Excel skills and you're basic, they'd be looking for it to say advanced Excel skills on the resume. Strategy is the third. I have a strategy when I'm looking at a resume, and it'll be talking about interns, it'll be talking for full-time roles. I have a strategy that I picture the person that would be great for the role in my head. And then I'm looking for the resume to match that. So I'm looking through resumes. So if your resume is clean, thorough, you have the actual degree that you received early on in the resume, you have your, and we're going to show a resume example in a second, but you have your skills quantified and so forth. It helps the recruiter and they move through the process faster. Connecting the resume to the role. So just to give you an example, a resume, for example, tells your story, but on paper. Connecting to the job, profile matching. I'm looking to match a profile. Remember, I picture that person in my head and I'm looking to match that particular profile. Your bullet points will define that experience, and it will also connect you to them. How you are applying. Are you applying online? Are you telling friends? Are you networking? Are you using the company website? So there's a number of different ways you can be applying, and we're going to talk about a few of them, but keep your avenues open. Where are you applying? A former client. So I might be, I might have worked with someone in the past from Lockheed Martin, to give you an example. So when you're purposeful for your role, if you can, go to Lockheed Martin's job board, go to their career site and start looking through the jobs. Now, let's just say Julia works at Lockheed. So I would say to her, I just applied for this role at Lockheed. It's been great working with you. I'd love to interview for the role. Now, she knows me from our relationship. So she may recommend me. She may tell me, you should reach out to this hiring manager. So that's something you want to do. That's a combination of networking. It's a combination of you being purposeful about who you're applying to. And it's a combination of using the company website. The type of company you are applying. This is more about you. I want you to make a wish list, right? What companies do you want to work for? So some of the companies I would love to work for, and anybody who knows me, I'm a Duncan fan. I'd love to work for Duncan, right? We get a discount. I would love to work for the Phillies. I would love to work for the Eagles. I would love to work for. So think about the companies that you feel like, and of course, I'll be realistic. I'm not going to say that I'm going to try SpaceX, right? Because that's not in my wheelhouse. So try to choose companies that you have a relationship with or you want to build a relationship with. The resume edit. So this is the purge. We've all heard of home edit, right? You're going to start purging things from your home that are no longer needed to make space for other things and be organized. The resume is the same way. If you have a 1 to 2 page resume, that's great. You may be in in the industry for 15, 22 years, we still have to keep that resume to probably to maybe 3 pages if you have to. Recently, we had a candidate apply for a job that had a 16-page resume, and it was not a lot of white space. Over the top, right? So you have to think to yourself, how can I condense this? I almost wanted to call the candidate back and say, let's sit down with your resume for a few hours and see what we can do. They had great experience, but it was just spoken of. They went back too far in their lifetime of career. Older experiences, good segue into that. It can be removed. So if you are in, a certain role for X number of years, you want to obviously just talk about the things that you've done, things that you succeeded at. The things you were doing 22 years ago when you started working there, they can be removed from your resume. Our company does a 7-year background check, and that's standard for us. So anything that you are going to list on your resume, they will go back 7 years to check that company. If you're with someone for 22 years, they're not going back that far, right? And to see if you still work there. It just causes too many issues. So we're on a 7-year background check. Gaps in your resume, talk about them. 2015 to 2018, I managed a household. Might have meant I stayed home with my kids. Contractor roles, include your contractor roles if they were valid, if you did reputable work, and if you did them for longer than maybe a week or 2. Consultant, same thing. Entrepreneur, same thing. If you started a business for 2 weeks and then it was gone, no need to list the entrepreneurship that you had. And I don't think I have to say, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because I don't think I have to say everything, but certain things I'm hoping to kind of have you write down a question or 2 if I bring something up that you were thinking. The resume scan itself. Take a look at this layout for this particular resume. Clean, right? Very easy to read. Talks about giving your professional statement at the top of the resume. So based on what type of role you're applying for, you would use 3 or 4 sentences to summarize your career. So I would say something like, I have 20 years experience working with student internship programs. I was a member of a student affairs staff. I'm trained in Title IX policies by ATICSA. So I might use, depending on what I'm applying for, I would use a few of those sentences. I'm a senior professional in human resources, Coursera, Six Sigma, any kind of certifications, strengths, skills, qualifications, word match. You're doing that with the job description. You're word matching the actual words they use in the description to your resume. You might say, I was a project manager. That may match the role that you were looking for. You may say, I do data analytics. Maybe it's a business operations analytics role, right? So the word analytics is in there, but they have a different name. You want the recruiter to think this person would be perfect. Falsifying your application. Let's talk on this a little bit because it is a thing. And everyone doesn't go into the role thinking, I'm going to lie about something on my application. It's not going to happen. What happens is maybe as you are doing your resume, you can't remember what month or maybe the year that you started a certain job. If I'm going to do the background check 7 years back, I'm going to call Wilkes University and say, did Julia work there from September 2024 to January 2026? And those are the 2 endpoints that I'm hoping to match. If they say, no, she didn't start working here till July of 25, she just may have misspoke, chose the wrong month. She thought it was when she went to Italy on her trip, and it wasn't during that time, it was before that time. So it's not done on purpose, but be mindful of that is falsifying your application if you have the incorrect months or years. Calling your unpaid role an internship or something similar, right? So if you were working at a soccer camp and then you call that an internship, really it was just that you were a volunteer. Don't call it what it's not. Calling your role executive director, you were the only employee in the office. Maybe you were the owner. Maybe you were the office manager, right? So just don't falsify the application. Recruiting coordinator and talent acquisition coordinator. I would say it's a little bit very similar, right? If you're just using a synonym but try to use the role that you were hired under, because when they call the company, that's what they're going to ask. And that's what they're going to ask the person to confirm. So your resume gets you, what does your resume get you from the interview? It shows your credentials, shows your skills, shows your abilities. Let's talk about the process. What process? So the process itself could be, the hiring process could be the search process. So yourself, if you were doing search process, you would say, I'm going to use certain avenues to do my search for certain jobs. So where to search? LinkedIn, Google Jobs. Company career pages, don't discount them. Going on the jobs page is oftentimes more current than the post on LinkedIn. Niche job boards, so for specific roles in the industry. So mechanical engineering or electrical engineering, maybe a job that you're looking to do. Try to find out and do a search on some of those niche boards. Networking. Leveraging your former clients, your vendors, your colleagues. Where are your colleagues going? If they're moving out of the company, what companies are they going to? Because chances are that company might be trying to poach from your current company. Learning about the company is next. So this is something about the company that I work for. I'm currently the university senior recruiter, university relations at PPL Corporation. This is what we do this is what we preface a job description with, the description of the company. So a few words here in the job description, in the opening, I'm going to call it, of the job description. If you're an electrical engineer. Community is another word. If you like doing customer or community service and working with customers, working with the community, there's a few words here. Sustainability, customer satisfaction. If that's some of your roles that you've had in the past, right away, our intro is mentioning those words. So when I see that on your resume, those are a few. Sustainability pulls me right in, right? Because if you worked in a company that was either a utility or anywhere with sustainability, already you have a leg up on all of the other 1,299 applications. The recruiting process. So here's the piece, as Julie and I discussed this earlier, here's the piece that I'm not sure everyone knows or thinks about, right? So you are the applicant. You're not thinking about the person receiving your resume. I want you to do that though. When you write your resume, when you're reading your resume, when you are applying for jobs, take on the role of the recruiter. If I was looking for a person for this role, for this job description, would I hire the resume over here to my left? Of course, it's yours, but look at it from an objective point of view, and that you don't want to say, oh yeah, I'd hire me. I have great experience. Dig into the resume. Do you show that experience? The recruiting process works like this. I will have someone email me today that they are looking for a new hire. So they're requesting a new hire. It's November 19th. So November 19th, I want to say this person wouldn't start work with us. I'm going to say January, February. I'm going to say February, because we have a background check, we have a drug screen. I have to sit with the hiring manager and have a strategy meeting. We're going to talk about what kind of person they're looking for this role. We're going to create a hiring team. We're going to create the people who's going to be on the interviews. This manager, this supervisor, this teammate. Now I need to get approval for this requisition. So I have to have 4 people sign off all the way up to the vice president, and that needs to be budget approved. And then I can start reviewing applications. We didn't think of other things that happen in between, but that's the process. I want you to think about that for a minute. It doesn't happen. If I post this on November 19th, all of this happened before that, right? So really I should have started in September if they want a February hire. Here are some of the things that come into play to delay that position. Budget, for example. Budget has not been approved. I have people onboarding from the other requisitions that I'm hiring for. So they're coming in to start, and the onboarding process. Travel. I travel a lot for my job. There's drug screens, there's things involved. There's people are out on paternity. So that hiring manager now is on paternity leave or maternity leave. And the number of applicants. The interview. Excuse me. What is the interview? So if you did a great job on your resume, here you are. Um, Phone screen is one way to interview. And I would do that to check on the person's communication skills. The way that that works is we'll have a conversation. Just, oh, why did you apply for the job? Tell me about where you saw it. Just casual conversation, 5 to 7 minutes. A little phone screen. How interested are you? Right. Sometimes when I call for a phone screen, they say, "And wait, what company is this?" Because they can't remember they've applied for so many. If you're at the interview, you did a great job to get here. Now get the job. Be conversational. Storytelling is huge. Using the STAR technique, talk about the situation, the task, the action, the results when asked a question. Avoid oversharing. Practice your stories. Details are great. Too many details, not so much, right? And we'll talk about a few things that don't say much about your character if it happens. I'm not going to talk about the background. We're all used to having Zooms and we're all used to making sure everything looks nice in the back. But during work hours, if you're interviewing, please let them know you're on lunch. Said something about your character, right? If you're interviewing during the workday at the job you're going to leave, doesn't say it's not a good thing. It's not a good look for the person doing the interview. Maybe you have to take the interview in the car. That is actually better than taking it in the office at your current job. Take a half day, right? Do your interview away from the office. And interviewing in the car, I've done it. I've had applicants do it. They don't feel very comfortable, so you're not at ease. You're not being your best self, I feel like, because you feel like I'm in the car, someone's going to see me. It's just too stressful. Of course, all interviews are behavioral based, a lot of them. Some of them are technical. So if you're interviewing for a technical role, you may be asked technical questions that you'll have to prepare for. A lot of these are behavioral questions that you would need to prepare for. And practicing your stories, practicing your answers, practicing how you would answer a question like this. And a lot of them sometimes are repetitive. They just ask it in a different way. So describe a time when you had to accommodate last minute changes. Oh, I see a typo on there, and adjust your priorities. How do you handle them? How do you handle multiple? That's basically what they're saying. Are you flexible? How do you handle multiple deadlines? Is how do you stay organized, right? So all of these questions are asking you to tell a story. Once you have the interview and you've conducted the interview, or when you're going into the interview, think about these three things. You want to establish in this interview your character, your personality, and your competency. So your character is going to be, I was timely, I was early for my interview, I'm dressed professionally. My character is, I might even mention something that spoke to my character during the questions. Personality. I will tell you that I'm talking a lot with my hands. When you are on a Zoom call, if you show your hands, it is shown that people who are storytelling and have a better personality, I always talk with my hands anyway, so that was a good thing for me. Talking with your hands makes you trustworthy. Competent. Are you competent? Where did you answer the questions to their to their exact person, the exact way that they would like to hear you answer those questions. And not everyone's exact, or it might take a little storytelling to get to the exact answer or the correct answer, but it was a competent answer. Like it was a smart answer. So you appear competent. That is the presentation for the most part. I don't know if there's anything in the chat. Questions, comments. Can we have a discussion? What are some jobs you're looking for? What are your thoughts? How did you get the job you have? Whatever you want to talk about. Let's do that. I think we have some time.
Sure. We have a question from Brian Summers, graduated in 1990. Brian, if you want to unmute, you're welcome to ask, or I'm happy to read it and pose it to Sharon for you.
Sure, I could ask. Sorry, I was off camera too. I was eating lunch. So, just wondering about the use of AI. Obviously, everybody's using it now on a surface level, but as far as, your resume, matching it up to job description, producing cover letters, do you recommend that?
I do. A few things with that, right? It's just like anything else. I recommend using new technology and mindfully using the new technology. So,
Mhm.
ChatGPT, for example, you can put your resume and the job description into ChatGPT and say, make my resume match the job description a little more. But then read it, right, Brian? Because you don't want it to say Brian was a project manager for 2,500 people, for a project with 2,500 employees, if that's not the way that you meant it to come out when it came back with answers. So obviously you want to read it for accuracy, for likability, making sure all of the details are correct. But it does put together a nice product if you've ever used it. So
I
I
have,
do
it have,
recommend
yeah.
it. Yeah, I do
Yeah, it works
recommend
well.
it. And it does. So some of the things we're finding with people who are interviewing with us are people who are sending in their applications will put words in the document in white font. So for example, the word electric might be in white font. Even though I have a marketing degree, master's in ed, you will not find electricity on my resume anywhere. But they want the applicant tracking system to pull my resume. So they'll put the word electric in a white font so you can't see it, so it's detected by the applicant tracking system. So that person gets through AI findings and comes to me as a qualified candidate. I don't use AI like that. So as a recruiter, we at PPL do not use AI like that, but people are trying to do that. So if it's going through an AI product, it would pick up on that particular word. It's not something that we recommend. People do because it's falsifying their application, only it's in a white font. But now recruiters have that knowledge, so they go ahead and take the resume, they'll highlight everything and make everything a black font, and then they'll find some hidden words there. So it's not something that we do recommend. It's falsifying the application and so forth. So AI, using it properly, just like anything else. We like candles, right? We want to use that safely when we light a candle, we're putting it next to the drapery. So anything that we use is a great product for doing something like that. It's great summary, especially for someone who has a 15-page resume that they want to shorten. Gosh, that would save so much time. So I definitely recommend using it and then going through it with a fine-tooth comb to make sure there are no errors.
Thanks for that.
You're welcome. Great question. Christine Lee, do you have a question? You're muted.
Okay, there we go. You mentioned AI. One of the things that I've always heard out there was that, recruiters like yourself, they use these applicant tracking systems that are AI based and they're looking for certain keywords, certain words. So I've been told, cater your resume or particularly your cover letter with these keywords. Do you find is that something that you've seen in your experience? I know you mentioned at PPL there's not a lot of use of AI with your position, but just is that something you've kind of come across in your for lack of a better word, in your travels?
Yeah. So to be honest with you, I don't look at cover letters. The applications are coming in through a system that sends us our resume and a list of questions that we ask you to answer. So it might be, the question might be, how did you hear about this job? So it's a whole list of questions that I will review. Do you have a relative that works at the company? So anything like that. It doesn't come in with a cover letter. So I would say use that matching piece with your resume and not so much the cover letter. Even though I think maybe depends on the recruiter. I used to read cover letters backwards, right? So I would read the resume first and say, this is a great resume. How do they present themselves verbally or orally or written, right? How are their communication skills? So then I would look at Christine's cover letter and say, she's a great writer. That I would do after I've seen the resume because I first need to check off those boxes. Does she have the right credentials? Does she have 7 years experience? Does she have the right major that we're looking for? To give you an example, we will have people who don't have it's not feasible that person's going to move forward once I see they have a bachelor's degree in psychology because that you need an engineering degree to be in the engineering role. And what they're doing is just apply.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing I was thinking about as you're talking about your resume, there's always this thing I've always been told, 2 pages max. I've been told like, as far as like experience, like what to include, what not to include. For me, it's my resume goes back to the first job I got out of Wilkes, which was back in 2014. And part of me is like, I don't want to get rid of it because there's some things on there I want to highlight from that position. So, so I'm just so how, I guess my question here is like, ideal length? What's the ideal length for a resume? Should be 1 page, 2 pages, and also, how far back should you go as far as experience?
Great question. And I'm going to tell you a few things, and the same thing goes for us, right? With our life in general, right? We knew something in 2014 and we don't want to let it go. We try to hang on to it. And I'll use myself as an example. My kids have moved out. I'm an empty nester. Do I really need to keep their drawings from when they were in 6th grade? I'm saying yes, but they're saying no, right? They don't need those anymore. You need to take yourself out of the equation, and you love that job and you love where you work, but are the skills that you did in that job applicable to the job you're applying for? Maybe, maybe not, right? 2014, and you made me feel old. Christine was my student when I worked at Wilkes University. So I was like, that was 2014. I thought it was 3 years ago. So looking at that experience, say, did I repeat it in the job I currently have? Am I doing similar things? Actually, I'm doing them better and more efficiently in my current job. Then let me remove that. And that was one of the reasons why I only talked about the first 3 roles in the beginning of our conversation here today, because I only wanted to go back to a certain point because that would be applicable to things that are happening today, right? If I listed my first job, it was in advertising, right? So that's not, I don't need it for this conversation. I don't need it for a current role that I'm applying for today, unless it were an advertising role. And even then I question, things are different. Right? The world's changing so quickly that you don't need to go back that far. So Christine, based on what job you're applying for, if you did something specific in that role, you received a certification that's going to apply to what you're interviewing for today, and you haven't done it since, then maybe refer back to it. Maybe make it a 1 line. You worked at this job from this date to this date, and you received a certification. So keeping it shorter will help you, because no one has time. Think of the person who sent the 16-page resume in. That poor person, I don't even know what the education was, because they saw 16 pages and they immediately dismissed it. Right? So it wasn't it's not a good look. It's not a good way to represent yourself. And I often will also speak about, imagine you're in the elevator. I'm a visual learner. Imagine you're in the elevator going up, and I'm riding the elevator with Stella. And I want Stella to hire me for a role. What can I tell her that is going to make her hire me? So I'm going to talk about that I'm a university relations recruiter. I have 20 years experience dealing with interns. I'm going to talk about the fact that I have a number of years dealing with Gen Z. Well, now they're Gen Z. I think Christine's a millennial. So I'm going to tell her I have that multi-generational experience. I'm not going to tell her I was in advertising out of my first job out of college, right? So think about your resume that way. You're going up in the elevator, you have maybe 8 floors before she gets off, and then she's gone. So how are you going to tell yourself? And that's the number of seconds the recruiter is going to give the resume.
Sharon, if you don't mind me adding, I have interviewed a fair amount of people and hired dozens of people over my career, and I really appreciate you saying conversational, because that's something I look for all the time, just trying to have a conversation, because some people are so prepared, they're a little bit check box, and that doesn't come off well. The other thing I'll mention too is ask about the company. I'm literally shocked about how many interviews I have where people don't even ask about the company at all. I mean, just simple look at the strategic plan. Say, I noticed you're going to do some work overseas next year as part of your plan. Tell me more about that. It really goes a long way.
It does. It does. Great point, Brian. And it was a point that I missed here today. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah. Asking about the company, and I get it, right? They don't want to sound like they didn't research the company. I don't want to sound like I didn't research the company, but your referral right back to what was printed about the company, you're referring to it. I read this. Can you tell me more about it? Because the story didn't elaborate on it. So the perfect way to do it. And conversational, I can't tell people enough. To tell a story, be conversational, and that goes a long way. And you're right, sometimes the person interviewing is trying to be too perfect, too on point, and they're forgetting just to tell the story. um and
I actually will ask a question. I say, is there something on the job you don't like to do? And if I don't get an answer, that's not good. If I get too much, that's not good either. But we want some honest answers. Like I always say, I used to hate mailing at jobs for some reason, like just shipping FedEx. I know how to do it, but I just didn't like it. And that would be my example. So usually I get a decent answer, but sometimes people go on and on. That's not good. Sometimes people
character.
don't say anything. I do anything. I like everything. You don't. I mean, we're all human, right? So
Yeah, that goes shows their character too, right? Like,
yeah.
oh, there's one thing I didn't like to do. I didn't like to give away free items
Yeah.
when we would have handouts. I wouldn't like to give things away. That's community based. That's
Mhm.
creating a community, and that's what we try to do all the time. So that would kind of go towards their character, like they don't want to give something out to the community. Yeah, good conversation. Has anyone searched for a job recently?
I've been searching for a job for the past few years. Ever
Okay.
since you probably are aware, I work for the Times Tribune, and you're probably aware the Times Tribune was sold a couple years ago to a company out of Colorado, and as always, it's and it resulted in buyouts and changes with the way the papers produced, and I've been trying to find something ever since in writing, communications, journalism outside of newspapers. Um, and this has been 2 years now.
Yeah, we can talk sidebar, Christine, because we could get into that a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And I do also recommend reaching out to Carol Bozak, because she does. So your career office, Brian too. I don't think Brian wants to call his career office and saying I'm looking for a job. But Christine, don't think that is beneath you either, because she has contacts with all of the companies that our office would currently work with, right? So she has those connections made, and she might have heard somebody like Brian say, "I'm really looking for somebody who has this kind of a talent." And she might have heard him say that, and then that's stuck in her mind, and she could share that with you. So I would do that
Mm-hmm.
as well. So the networking piece is something that it's almost like you're afraid to ask for what you want. Don't be afraid, because
Yeah.
no one's going to come and knock at your door and say, I have these 3 jobs for you, because they think you're looking, right? So they're not going to come and knock at your door and say, I have 3 jobs for you. Would you like to take them?
Mm-hmm.
No, you're going to have to go and kind of put yourself out there in conversation again. Um, I wouldn't do I don't know, the LinkedIn post is a bit much sometimes when they put it out to their whole network. Like that's fine. You can do that as well if that works. But a lot of times I would start with the people that can speak of my talent and not just my whole LinkedIn community.
Yeah. I've actually heard somewhere, and I don't know if there's anybody else who could speak to this, but I saw somewhere, I don't remember where, but you know how you go on LinkedIn and sometimes people have on their LinkedIn profile these little like open to work
Yeah.
things. I've heard that you shouldn't do that. I like it sounds counterintuitive, but I've heard somewhere that you shouldn't do that. That you shouldn't that you shouldn't like it like essentially advertise like I'm looking for a job
I
on
know. Yeah.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, your coworkers will see it, but that's really up to you, right? It's how you use your social media account, it's how you use your LinkedIn account, and so forth. Um, Brian, when you're vetting your candidates, do you go and look at their LinkedIn profile?
I will. And I heard the same thing, Christine. And ironically, I'm unemployed right now. So that's why I was on this call, just trying to get some insights on that. But I'm actually using that banner on there for me and getting some recruiters to call me. So I think it still works, but it's your call at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely search LinkedIn for candidates because I think it's a good use of the time. I think you get more direct results that way.
Yeah, I agree. And I think too, one other thing, how are we on time, Stella?
Doing great.
Okay. One of the other things that I feel like people don't do enough of, because there's two things. Julie and I talked about this morning. They're that you're purposeful about your search. You're looking for somewhere that you want to work, in a job that you want to work in, and then you're looking for a job, right? Just a job. They can both work the same way. So you're being purposeful. So I'll use my search as an example. It was a hard decision for me to leave Wilkes, but when I did, I wanted to move into a role where I can continue what I was doing, but now I can hire the candidate, right? So I was purposeful about looking for someone who was able to hire the students from a university relations program or into a university relations program. So if you're being purposeful with your search, that's one thing to do. So recruiting was on my list of things to do. And when I saw university relations recruiter, it was a good fit. So if you're purposeful, that's great. Some people I've spoken to, they're like, I will take a job because I know I don't want to do what I was doing before, but maybe this job will lead me into a new career path. So they're ready to change their career path altogether. And maybe it has to do with, like you said, Christine, the company got sold, or the company moved into a new direction and they moved all of their operations to Germany. So it's just a matter of in what way are you looking for that job?
The other thing I can mention too is as far as searching is I worked for associations for about 30 years, and associations are great resources for jobs. So there's usually I work on 501c6, which is professional associations. So basically any profession has an association linked to it. I mean, journalism probably does too. Take a look and see. Usually membership fees are small, a couple $100 here or there for a year, and you can definitely network that way and find some positions available.
Yeah, I agree. Good conversations. But you know what? I want to say that AI I don't want to say it's overrated, right? Very helpful. I'm not sure about the policies still at Wilkes these days. What are their policies about students using AI on their resume?
Oh, I think it's different for students versus staff. We
Right.
hear that sometimes at like university town halls that the staff are using AI to help create their syllabi and things like that, but then students aren't allowed to use it in the class. So that's always a push and pull. But
Yeah, and that's because of its organizational technique. Like that's basically what I use AI for, is to organize all types of it's a big email with all of these things, and here's some action items, and it puts it in a nice little format for me. So I send it out to my team, and here's the important information, here's the action items you have, and here's the results. So that's what I use AI for, and using it in that way for your resume, I feel like is helpful. Brian, did you put your resume through AI?
I did. I removed the M dashes. That's a big thing now. And now the AI ChatGPT will do that for you. That's an identifier of using the tool. So I want to take that out, obviously. But yeah, it does match it up. I mean, the cover letter part is phenomenal. I mean, I've used
Yeah.
it 6 times already for that. So
Yes, I agree. But also, your presence on camera matches your cover letter, right? So
correct. Yeah.
when there's a disconnect, that cover letter is great, and then you have someone on camera who may not be as confident in themselves or as comfortable with the setting of interviewing in this type of way. And they're not talking with their hands all the time. It takes away from what was written in the cover letter.
Sharon, I had another question that's come up around Campus Summit with different colleagues or students. One thing I've noticed in Pennsylvania is a lot of job postings don't share a salary range. So I think that's always an awkward part of this process is when, where, and how do you bring up, hey, can you give me an idea of what this position is paying? You're spending the time working on your resume, doing an application, not sure whether or not you can even afford to take the job. So you don't want to lead with that because it seems disingenuous, but what tips would you give somebody for when and how to address that?
I would search the salary range. So you can search that on Glassdoor if you're, able to commit to Glassdoor that you would like to give them some information, because you're right. Pennsylvania does not have that requirement. Rhode Island has that requirement. Actually, we have a company, we're affiliated with Rhode Island Energy. And so it's mandatory. They put it in their job post. We are not mandated to do that. And I will say that a lot of the previous thinking was if you're asking for salary up front, you don't care so much about the job, but today's day and age, you have to make a certain salary to continue paying your rent and your apartment and your car and so forth. So while I think it is nice when companies do that, I definitely appreciate that they do that. I think they probably do have a lot better, a lot more controlled number of applicants because not everybody is applying. But I think they have to go ahead on Glassdoor and just research, maybe not the company name itself, but if you're looking for business analytics person in Pennsylvania in the Northeast region, what would the salary range be? And it might, it might show some of the company names and so forth. But I don't know that asking that in the very first interview is your best bet. Phone screen might be a good way, right? So I started out conversations with a phone screen. It might be a good time to say, I'm wondering if you can tell me what the range is for this role. And sometimes it's huge, right? It might be 50 to 84,000, depending on your experience. So I think that's when you take the chance and do the interview. The only thing too, the other thing I'll say about doing the interview when the salary isn't what you want, I have another idea in my head. If I like you as a candidate, I want to keep the talent. So I'm going to recommend you for Julia's job that's open in her department, because I thought you had a really good interview and Julia gets to pay more than we do. So I would say do that interview anyway to make that impression, to get that name for yourself. As a recruiter, they may remember who you are. Write your name down for somebody and say, I just interviewed somebody who would do good for that role. And then they would pass that on. So I wouldn't say that's a
It's a
total
great
loss.
idea. I think it's a great idea to do that because, I mean, even if the job isn't for you, like for example, I went for a job, it's for an association management company. Obviously I'm not a company. I said, listen, I'll help you out in the selection process. I got some experience. I got a call back. So I mean, don't don't be afraid to be creative with some feedback about how you might fit in an organization.
Yeah.
It's a great point too about like leaving things on a good note. I've been surprised sometimes in the interview process, like how far it goes just to be pleasant and like, well, thank you for considering me, even though I'm not the right candidate. I hope that you'll keep me in mind for the future. That then they are more likely to remember you and call you back for other positions and things too.
That's a good point, ending on a good note. You would be surprised the number of candidates when they receive a rejection letter will email back and say, I have 22 years of experience in this. Can you tell me why I was not chosen? With a little bit of an attitude. And I can't go through the list of pointers why maybe you were not chosen in the email back to them. But sending like an email back with an attitude is not the best look. So Stella, that's a good point. Yeah.
That's
Do you give
interesting.
feedback though? Do you give feedback though typically to somebody that'll ask and maybe politely ask?
Yeah, they ask politely. I do because I work with students mostly, Brian. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to give that, right? And they're always like kind of laughing at me a little bit, like, "Oh, Sharon will do it,"
Yeah.
because
Let her do it.
that's how I was raised, right? 20 years in grooming students to be successful. I would give candidates accurate feedback had I been in the interview.
Yeah. I think it's healthy. I think it's
Yeah,
healthy.
I do too. And if they circle back and ask nicely, like, "Hey, I really thought I did well," and a lot of times it's because the team, the team itself made the decision, and
Mhm.
it was based on this other person might have had a certification that they didn't have, right?
Yeah.
So if they're talking between two candidates, one had the certification and one did not. So it came down to like that.
Yeah, it's interesting that that you mentioned if there was something that you mentioned like if you didn't get the job. I remember I read somewhere recently like it may have even been on LinkedIn. It was an article about like like the beauty in rejection or something like that if you don't get a job. And it was the point of the article was that oftentimes like you may not have gotten the job now, you may not have gotten the job you were interviewing for, but the company might hold on to your resume and they might just say, hey, Christine would be better for this role, and
Yes.
they might reach out to you for that. And I can tell you that actually did happen with me at my last job at my job when I was in Pottsville at the Republican Herald. Is I initially applied for a copy editor position, interviewed for it, didn't get it. And then the person I was interviewing with said, hey, we have a reporter position opening up. I can arrange for you to come in and interview.
Yeah. And also think about these things happening when you're applying for, so PPL has about 6,000 employees. So I will be, I'd be remiss in saying that we can't always do something like that because of the quantity of applicants that we have. But our recruiters, if you're developing a relationship with them, usually do things like that, right? So you're, maybe in a company of 6,000, things will fall through the cracks. But if you have a relationship with the recruiter, it's good. It's good to have because you have that ability to reach out, and say, I just saw this posted. I applied for it. And then I would share that with the recruiter who's maybe in charge of that particular role. So it's good. It's all relationship building. Everything that we do is relationship building. So I can't say enough about that and letting your personality show through the screen, right? And be visible to the people that you're interviewing with. And sometimes it's hard because you're looking at a screen with a small piece. In fact, I should stop share now. You're looking at a person with a small screen, and I've never had a problem, but I've always talked with my hands, and I can have a conversation with a stranger sitting next to me in Starbucks. So it's not a problem for me, but practice that. Yeah, and keep that in mind when you're interviewing.
This has been a really great conversation. I want to be respectful of people's time. I know we're coming up close on the 1 o'clock hour. Any other last questions before we wrap up here? Wonderful. Our next Kernel Connection is going to be on internships. So funny enough, the current person who's in Sharon's former job, Jenna Weiss, who's our Director of Internships in the Career Center now, she'll be talking about how to create an internship. So once you guys land fabulous jobs and you need a little help around the office, how you could build an internship out and hire a Wilkes student and use them to both help you as well as help them in their career exploration. So tune in December 17th for that next Kernel Connection. We'd love to have you. And again, we will share out the recording with everybody along with a little survey about today. If you have any topics you'd love to have us cover in the future, or you know anyone who would make a great speaker, definitely let us know.
Andrew Seaman he is a former Wilkes alumni, or he is a Wilkes alumni, former Wilkes student. He works for LinkedIn.
Awesome.
Yeah, he'd be perfect, right, Christine?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would love to see best practices on how to use LinkedIn because I need some help. So
yeah, I think that would be a great topic. And that's exactly what he does in his job at LinkedIn. Yeah. So that's my contribution to the next speakers. And I do work with Jenna to bring interns into PPL.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Sharon. This was a great topic. You covered some wonderful things. And Christine and Brian, thanks for joining us. Hope that everyone has a wonderful afternoon, and we will see you all soon.
You as well. Thanks so much.
see you, buddy.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Good seeing you.